Canada has 100% tariffs right now on Chinese electric vehicles, and that's good for the Ontario auto industry. But China responded with tariffs on Canadian canola, and that's bad for Saskatchewan and Manitoba.
The Carney government's moves on the border have in part been forced by the ongoing trade war with the United States. But Canada's economy is under pressure on two fronts, a trade war with the U.S. and one with China. Now, Prime Minister Mark Carney has been trying to maintain a unified Team Canada approach, but cracks are surfacing.
China's ambassador to Canada saying canola tariffs will be dropped if Canada drops its tariffs on Chinese-made electric vehicles.
No one in Washington or Beijing saw this coming. Mark Carney, the calm, calculated Canadian figure who built his reputation as one of the most respected economic minds in the Western world, just made a move that has sent shockwaves across the global stage. Moments ago, Carney accepted China's trade deal, and the political world has gone silent. Donald Trump, who had been pushing relentlessly to isolate China and pressure allies to stay away from Beijing's influence, was reportedly stunned by the announcement. This isn't just another trade deal. This is a direct challenge to everything Trump has been building since his return to political prominence. His America First economic revival, his nationalist push against Chinese power, and his effort to bring manufacturing, trade, and jobs back to American soil. And yet, here comes Mark Carney, the man many now call Canada's quiet strategist, stepping into the global spotlight and shaking up the very foundation of Trump's trade agenda. For months, the whispers were getting louder. Talks between Canadian representatives and Chinese trade envoys, secret meetings in neutral zones, and private discussions over energy, infrastructure, and technology cooperation. But few believed it would actually happen, not with Trump's White House breathing down the necks of American allies, warning them that any alignment with Beijing would be treated as an economic betrayal. Then, out of nowhere, Carney confirmed it. The ink is dry. Canada, under Carney's economic leadership, has formally accepted China's trade framework, setting the stage for one of the most dramatic power shifts in modern economic history. Inside Washington, aides were scrambling. Trump's advisors, already dealing with a shaky domestic economy and a series of global tensions, had no immediate response. Sources close to the administration described the president's reaction in one word: stunned. Trump, who prided himself on being the master dealmaker, suddenly looked like he had been outplayed. Not by Beijing directly, but by a Western ally he never expected to defy him so openly. To understand how we got here, we need to rewind the clock a little. For years, Carney has been more than just a central banker or economist. He's been a quiet but powerful force in shaping Canada's global image, as a country that doesn't want to pick sides but also won't be left behind in the 21st century race for economic relevance. While the U.S. doubled down on tariffs, sanctions, and pressure, Carney pushed for something different: pragmatic cooperation, where ideology takes a backseat to opportunity. When Carney took on a more visible role in shaping Canada's financial and trade policy, many assumed he would naturally align with the U.S. After all, Canada's economy is deeply intertwined with America's. But as tensions grew between Washington and Beijing, Carney began sending subtle but unmistakable signals that Ottawa was not going to be dragged into someone else's trade war. He spoke repeatedly about the importance of a balanced global economy, warning that isolating China would backfire and create what he called a world of fractured prosperity. Those words were dismissed in Washington at the time. But now, after today's announcement, they look prophetic. Trump's trade strategy has always been aggressive, built on the idea that the U.S. could strong-arm nations into choosing sides. Under his leadership, America pulled out of multilateral deals, slapped tariffs on imports, and demanded that allies follow its lead. But Carney just did the opposite. He accepted China's trade offer, signaling a new chapter in global economics, one where countries might choose cooperation with Beijing over confrontation with Washington. Behind closed doors, this move has deeper implications than it appears. China's trade framework, which Carney has now accepted, is rumored to include extensive agreements on rare earth minerals, green energy technology, digital payments, and financial services integration. That's not just about trade, it's about power. Control over rare earth elements and green tech means control over the future economy, batteries, AI chips, and renewable infrastructure. And by signing this deal, Carney has essentially positioned Canada as a gateway between Western economies and China's industrial ambitions. For China, this is a massive win. After years of diplomatic setbacks and Western sanctions, Beijing has finally landed a deal with one of the US's closest allies. And it's not just any ally, it's Canada, a G7 nation with deep credibility in both financial and democratic institutions. That gives Beijing something priceless: legitimacy. But for Trump, this is nothing short of a geopolitical earthquake. He's built his political identity on the idea that America must stand strong against China and lead the West in confronting its rise. Now, an ally he assumed was firmly in his camp has just switched lanes, not through military alliances or diplomatic speeches, but through cold, hard economics. It's the kind of move that changes everything quietly but permanently. The initial reactions across global markets were immediate. Asian indices jumped. The Shanghai Composite rose within hours of the announcement. The Canadian dollar surged, briefly outpacing expectations against the US dollar. And Wall Street? Confused. Traders didn't know whether to treat this as a threat or an opportunity. Because if Canada, one of the most loyal Western partners, can engage with China without backlash, what's stopping Germany, France, or Australia from doing the same? In geopolitical circles, analysts are calling this the Carney pivot, and it might be the single most significant diplomatic event of the decade so far. Trump, meanwhile, has stayed uncharacteristically silent. No tweet, no statement, no angry press briefing. At least not yet. Sources close to the administration say the silence isn't strategy, it's shock. The former president, known for his immediate and fiery responses, was reportedly caught completely off guard. And inside Mar-a-Lago, discussions have already begun on how to counter this unexpected move. But what makes Carney's decision so fascinating is that it wasn't made out of desperation or weakness. It was strategic. He knew exactly what message it would send, not only to Beijing and Washington, but to the rest of the world. That Canada is no longer just following in America's shadow, that it's willing to chart its own course, even if it means facing the wrath of its southern neighbor. To many Canadians, this represents a bold and necessary step. Canada's economy, long dependent on exports to the US, has been searching for diversification. With China offering access to massive markets for energy, tech, and agriculture, Carney's acceptance could open doors that Washington has kept closed for years. But to Trump supporters and economic nationalists, it's nothing short of betrayal. They see this as a warning that America's influence, once absolute, is slipping. And the fact that it's slipping not to rivals but to allies makes it even more alarming. In Beijing, the mood couldn't be more different. Officials there are calling the deal a model for fair and equal cooperation. Chinese media outlets have already begun framing Carney as a visionary, a Western leader who understands that global progress requires partnership, not pressure. State-run publications are celebrating the move as proof that China's global strategy of win-win cooperation is finally paying off. But beneath the headlines, there's a much deeper game at play. China's trade deal with Carney isn't just about economics. It's a test of Western unity. If Canada can make this work, if it can balance relations between the US and China without suffering major fallout, it could inspire other nations to follow suit. That would weaken the West's collective bargaining power against Beijing and completely redefine global alliances. For Trump, who campaigned on bringing America's manufacturing back from China and putting America first, this could not have come at a worse time. His entire message is based on strength, control, and dominance in trade negotiations. And now, he looks like he's losing that control. Not because of China's aggression, but because of a Western defection. Insiders in Washington have already begun calling this the Carney shock. They say it exposes the flaw in Trump's worldview. That loyalty among Western allies isn't guaranteed, especially when economic survival is at stake. Canada's decision shows that even friendly nations are willing to sidestep the US when it benefits them economically. and the ripple effect could be enormous. Think about this. If Canada's economy thrives under this New Deal, what stops the European Union from negotiating a similar framework? What stops Japan from softening its trade restrictions? What stops even the United Kingdom from seeking limited cooperation with Beijing on green energy or financial systems? If one domino falls successfully, others might follow. Trump's supporters argue that Carney is walking straight into Beijing's trap, that China's deals always come with strings attached, giving it quiet leverage over domestic economies. They believe this will backfire on Canada and serve as a cautionary tale for others. But Carney seems to have calculated that risk and decided it was worth taking. In his recent remarks, he emphasized that Canada's economic independence lies not in isolation but in diversification. That one sentence has already gone viral, especially among economists who see it as a direct rejection of America's protectionist approach. Behind the scenes, Chinese diplomats have been celebrating not just the deal itself, but the symbolism. After years of being portrayed as the world's bad actor in Western media, China now gets to claim that a respected Western leader chose cooperation over confrontation. That gives Beijing the moral high ground it's been seeking in its global narrative. The idea that it's not China isolating the world, but the US isolating itself. And as the dust settles, one thing becomes clear. This isn't just about a trade deal. It's about who gets to shape the future. Trump may have built his legacy on confronting China, but Carney just reminded the world that power doesn't always come from pressure. Sometimes it comes from patience, strategy, and timing. This moment marks more than a shift in trade. It's a test of leadership, of influence, and of trust between old allies. And as Washington, Ottawa, and Beijing adjust their moves, the question that remains is simple. Who will truly control the next chapter of global power?